I stepped onto the damp trail in Chiloé Forest one deceivingly calm night, the kind where the stillness feels like a lie and the darkness pressed in like a weight I couldn't shake. My name's Olavo, a 41-year-old ranger in this wild stretch of southern Chile, and I'd barely gone a few steps when I flicked on my lantern, expecting its steady beam to slice through the thick fog rolling off the trees. Instead, the light sputtered and danced, a weak flicker against the heavy mist, and a chill crawled up my spine. I wasn't alone. Faces twisted out of the fog, some pleading with hollow eyes, others grinning wide and grotesque, each one more unsettling than the last, staring at me like they knew me. I've spent years in these woods trading my old life as a fisherman, nets heavy with salt and scales for the crunch of boots on mossy earth, chasing the peace I thought this forest could give me. Shiloh was a place where the trees lean in close, whispering secrets in the wind, and the distant roar of the sea feels like a ghost haunting the edges of my mind. I'm a practical guy, always have been. No time for the old wives' tales. The villagers spin, but that night the ground shifted under me, soft and unsteady, and the fog wrapped around like a cold hand I couldn't push away. The mist had been getting worse lately, thickening over the past few days like it had a pulse, a life of its own. With it came these faces, lost souls, strangers with stories I could feel in my bones, etched into the bark and roots around me. I'd laughed off an old fisherman's yarn once, his voice slurred with cheap wine, about spirits trapped between worlds, their cries rustling the leaves. It was kid stuff, a scare for the gullible, until now, with my lantern flickering like a dying heartbeat and those whispers creeping closer. A sharp chill sliced through the trees, sharp enough to make my teeth ache, and I shivered, my breath fogging thick in the damp air. The lantern flared wild, its light jumping like it was scared too, and for a split second, I heard it. Whispers, soft and urgent, riding the wind. They weren't just noise. They were calling me, tugging at something deep I'd buried long ago, and my heart kicked hard against my ribs, a drumbeat I couldn't quiet. I've heard the tales since I was a kid, my grandfather's voice, rough as the sea, spinning yarns about Chiloé's dark days when the forest was a no-man's land, swallowing travelers whole. He'd talk with a mix of fear and awe, warning us to tread light. But I'd always shrugged it off, chalking it up to superstition from a time before roads and radios. Now, standing there, the fog curling thicker, I felt the truth in those stories, clawing its way up, undeniable and cold. The faces in the mist sharpened, pleading eyes, twisted mouths, and I forced myself to look away, my gut churning with a dread I couldn't name. But something pulled me forward, a tug I couldn't fight, like the lantern's flicker was a guide, promising answers I wasn't sure I wanted. My boots sank into the soft earth and I took a shaky step, drawn deeper into the woods. The ground wasn't just damp. It felt alive, pulsing under me, urging me toward something I couldn't see. I'd walked these trails 1,000 times, mapped every twist. But this was different, a path uncharted even to me. The forest had me now, its grip tightening, and as night fell heavy, I knew I was stepping into its secrets, secrets I might not come back from. The deeper I went, the louder the whispers grew, a chorus weaving through the fog, insistent and sharp, like they were begging me to listen, to hear their pain. My lantern sputtered harder, its light barely piercing the haze, casting wild shadows that danced across the gnarled trunks, turning them into looming shapes that watched me stumble on. Then I hit a clearing, a break in the trees where the fog pulled back just enough to show an old stone altar, moss-covered and tangled with vines, like it had been waiting there forever. My heart thudded loud, a frantic rhythm, and I froze, staring at it. I'd heard the old stories, offerings to forest spirits, rituals lost to time, but seeing it, feeling its weight, hit different, like stepping into one of Grandpa's tales. A figure shimmered out of the mist, an old woman, wild hair spilling over her shoulders, eyes deep and dark like storm pools. My breath caught as I recognized her, Doña Rita, The village recluse, the one who'd mutter warnings about the woods and the sea. "Olavo," she rasped, her voice a dry whisper that echoed around us. "You shouldn't be here. The forest's awake." "What's awake?" I asked, my voice shaky, stepping closer despite the fear curling in my gut. "The fog," she said, her eyes glinting in the lantern's weak glow. "It's a veil. Brings the lost ones out, stuck between worlds. You've stirred something old." Her words sank in, heavy and cold, and I felt the air tighten around me. A low growl rumbled from the shadows, deep and guttural, and I spun, the lantern shaking as a hulking shape stepped into view, dark, massive, with ember-bright eyes. Cutting through the haze, my legs locked, instinct screaming run, but I couldn't move, pinned by its stare as it circled slow, a predator sizing me up. "Fear not," Doña Rita said, raising a hand, calm as death. And the creature paused, growling low. "He's a guardian, keeps the balance, doesn't like trespassers." Her voice was steady, but I saw the tension in her, like she knew how close we were to the edge. "Guardian of what?" I managed, my throat dry, eyes darting between her and the beast. "The forest," she said, stepping toward me, her presence. A strange mix of comfort and dread. "It's alive, Olavo, protects its own, punishes the greedy. You've got to face what you've done, or it'll take you too." The truth hit hard, and I knew this wasn't just a walk. It was a reckoning. The guardian's growl rumbled deep in my chest, its ember eyes locked on me, and I felt the fog tighten like a noose, the whispers swelling into a desperate hum. My lantern flickered wild, a dying pulse in my hands, and Doña Rita stood there, her wild hair whipping in the wind, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Face it, Olavo, or you're lost." "What do you mean, face it?" I croaked, my voice cracking under the weight of her stare, the beast circling closer, its breath hot and damp against my skin. "Your past," she said, sharp and sure. "The forest remembers the nets, the greed, what you took. You came for peace, but it demands a price." My heart sank, a cold flood of guilt washing over me. "I've changed," I shouted, desperate, the words spilling out raw. "I left that life, came here to make it right." But even as I said it, I felt the lie. Fishing had been my world, tearing at the sea without a second thought, and I'd never really faced the cost. The creature snarled, low and menacing, its bulk brushing past me, and I flinched, the heat of it searing through my jacket. "You think words fix it?" Doña Rita snapped, her eyes narrowing. "The spirits don't care about your regrets, they feel your scars. You've got to own them." A crack split the air loud and sharp, and the ground bucked under me, tossing me against the altar. My hands gripped the mossy stone, slick and cold as the fog surged, a living storm twisting around us. "What's happening?" I yelled, panic clawing up my throat, the lantern's light flaring and dimming fast. Another shape darted through the mist. A girl, young, pale, her wild hair streaming like seaweed, her eyes wide with terror. My breath caught. She was the fisherman's daughter, lost years ago, when her dad didn't come back from the sea. I'd known him, bragged with him over beers, watched him sail out into storms I'd never dared, and I'd done nothing. "Help me," she cried, her voice piercing the chaos, thin and frantic, reaching out from the fog. "They're coming!" My gut twisted. I'd failed her father, left him to the waves, and now here she was, a ghost from my past, begging me to act where I'd frozen before. "Who's coming?" I shouted, stumbling toward her, the ground still trembling under my boots. The whispers roared, a wall of sound, names, cries, a tangle of sorrow, and I felt them closing in, their pain a weight I couldn't shake, a mirror to my own. Doña Rita's voice cut through, fierce and urgent. "The lost, the ones you wronged, the sea's dead, bound to this forest, and they want justice." Her words hit like a punch, dragging up every late-night memory, the nets full, the storms I ignored, the lives I let slip away. The girl's eyes locked on mine, desperate, pleading. "You didn't save him," she screamed, and I reeled, guilt slamming me hard. "I was scared," I yelled back, voice breaking, tears stinging my eyes. "I didn't know, I didn't think he'd die." The fog pulsed, shadows writhing, and the guardian growled low, circling tighter. You can't run, Doña Rita said, stepping closer, her voice softening but firm. Face him. Face them, or they'll drag you under too. Her hand hovered. Near me, a lifeline I wasn't sure I deserved. Why me? I rasped, desperation choking me, my hands shaking as I clutched the altar. Because you're here, she said, simple and brutal. You chose this forest. Now, it's chosen you. Help her, Olavo, help them all, or it's over. The earth shook again, a deep groan rumbling through the trees, and I saw it, the fisherman's face flickering in the mist, weathered and sad, his daughter's cries echoing around him. I'll do it, I said, voice cracking, resolve flickering. To life. Tell me how, before it's too late. The whisper surged, a deafening roar, and the fog closed in, thick and alive, swallowing us whole. Doña Rita's eyes burned into mine, the guardian's growl vibrating in my bones, and I knew this wasn't just a fight for me. It was for every soul this forest held, and I was all in, ready or not. I stood there, the fog choking the air, Doña Rita's words ringing in my ears. Help them, Olavo, or it's over. And the guardian's growl rumbled low, its ember eyes boring into me. My hands gripped the altar, slick with moss and sweat, and the fisherman's daughter stared, her desperate cry still echoing, "You didn't save him," tearing at me like a blade. "Tell me everything," I said to her, my voice raw, shaking with a mix of fear and resolve as I forced myself to meet her gaze. She nodded, slow and shaky, tears streaking her pale face, and her voice trembled as she started. "My father, he was good, Olavo, worked hard, risked everything to feed us." Her words sank in, heavy and sharp, and I saw him, Mateo, laughing. Over beers, his weathered hands, slapping the bar, bragging about the big hauls he'd chased through storms. "He went out that day," she whispered, choking on it. "Sea was wild, spitting waves high as houses, but he had debts. Thought one more catch would fix it." I flinched, guilt clawing up my throat. I'd been there, seen him gearing up, his boat rocking in the harbor. I should have stopped him, I muttered, low, the memory bitter. I'd stayed quiet, watched him sail off, too scared to say a damn thing, too scared to lose a friend. "You were his friend," she shouted, her voice cracking, eyes blazing now. "You could have warned him, could have saved us." The accusation hit hard, a punch I deserved, and I staggered back, the fog swirling thicker, the whispers swelling. Mateo's voice now, low and sad, joining hers. "I was afraid," I yelled, my voice tearing out, rough with years of buried shame. "I didn't want to lose him, didn't think he'd die." Tears burned my eyes, hot and fast, and I felt the forest lean in, the shadows tightening, feeding on every word, every crack in my armor. Doña Rita stepped up, her wild hair whipping in the wind, her voice cutting through like a blade. "Enough hiding, Olavo. You've run from this too long. Face it, all of it." Her hand shot out, pointing at Mateo's shape in the mist, and I saw him, his face clear now, etched with pain, waiting for me to own it. The ground bucked again, a violent jolt that sent me sprawling, my lantern clattering against the altar, its light flaring wild, then dimming low. "I'm sorry," I screamed, desperation spilling out, my voice echoing through the trees. "Mateo, I failed you, failed her. I didn't know how to stop it." "Make it right," the girl cried, her voice rising sharp over the chaos, her small frame trembling, but fierce. "You can't just say it, you've got to do it." Her words hit like a slap, and I felt the weight shift, the fog pulsing, alive with their pain, my pain, all tangled up. Mateo's ghost drifted closer, his voice a gravelly whisper. "You've carried this too long, Olavo. Choose now, run or free us." His eyes locked on mine, sad but steady, and I felt it. A chance, a crack in the dark, if I could just grab it. The forest roared, the shadows surging, and I hauled myself up, heart pounding like a drum. "Tell me how," I shouted, my voice ragged, turning to Doña Rita, to Mateo, to the girl, anyone who'd answer. "What do I do?" The air crackled, tense and electric, waiting for me. Doña Rita's voice sliced through, calm but urgent. "The truth. Give it up, all of it. Let it go. and you'll break the hold." Her hand hovered near me, steady, and the guardian growled low, circling tight, its heat brushing my skin like a warning. "I'll do it," I said, low and firm, tears streaming now, resolve kicking in hard. "I let you down, Mateo. I was a coward. I'm here now. I'll set you free." My chest burned, the words tearing loose, and I felt the fog flinch, a ripple running through it. The clearing shook, the shadows screaming, and I faced them. Mateo, his daughter, every lost soul staring me down. "Oh, I'm sorry," I said, loud, letting it all out. "I can't change it, but I'll make it right. I'll help you go." The forest trembled, and I knew this was it, my shot, their shot, and I wasn't backing down. The fog surged around, me a living storm as I shouted my truth into the chaos. "I'll help you go." My voice raw, tearing through the whispers like a knife. Mateo's ghost hovered close, his weathered face softening, and the girl's eyes shimmered with something like hope. Her small hands clenched tight. The ground bucked hard, a deep groan rumbling up from the earth, and I braced against the altar, its moss slick under my palms. "You mean it?" she whispered, her voice cutting through the roar, fragile but fierce, and I nodded, tears streaming, my chest tight with the weight of it all. "I do," I said, low and firm, meeting Mateo's gaze, his ember eyes steady now, not accusing anymore. "I failed you, both of you, but I'm here now. Tell me what to do." My hands shook, but my voice held, resolve burning through the fear, the guilt, the years I'd run. Doña Rita stepped up, her wild hair whipping in the wind, her voice sharp and clear. "Give it up, all of it. The guilt, the shame, let it go, Olavo. It's the chain holding them here." Her hand pointed at the fog, the shadow swirling frantic, and I felt it, their pain, my pain, tangled tight. I sucked in a breath, the air thick with damp and decay, and closed my eyes, digging deep. "Mateo," I said, loud, the words spilling out raw. "I was scared, scared to lose you, scared to fight. I left you to the sea, and I've hated myself every day since." My voice cracked, but I kept going, letting it pour out. The girl's voice joined in, soft but strong. "He talked about you, said you were brave. He didn't blame you, but I did." Her words hit hard, a fresh cut, and I opened my eyes, meeting hers. "I'm sorry," I rasped, "for everything. I'll make it right." The guardian growled, low, circling closer, its heat brushing my skin, but I stood firm, facing Mateo. "I let you down," I said, steady now. "I was a coward, but I'm not running anymore. Go, be free." My chest burned, the weight lifting, piece by jagged piece. The forest shook, a violent tremor cracking the ground, and the fog flared bright, a blinding pulse that swallowed the clearing. I screamed, raw and primal, letting it all out, the guilt, the fear, the years of hiding, and felt it snap, a chain breaking loose inside me. When the light faded, the fog pulled back, the clearing glowing soft, green moss, sharp air, alive. In a way it hadn't been. Mateo's shape shimmered, his face calm, and the girl smiled, faint but real, her tears gone. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice fading into the wind. The shadows dissolved, spirits lifting like mist in the dawn, and I sank to my knees, gasping, the weight gone but the scars deep. Doña Rita knelt beside me, her hand light on my shoulder. "You did it," she said, soft but heavy, "but it's not over." "What's left?" I asked, hoarse, my eyes on the altar, the lantern dark now, just a cold shell. "More," she said, grim. "You've freed them, but the forest holds others. Darkness doesn't let go easy." Her words sank in, a chill creeping back. Mateo lingered. A faint outline, his voice a whisper. "You've got a fight ahead, Olavo. Don't run from it." He faded, the girl with him. And I felt it, a hollow ache where they'd been, but a spark too, a fire I hadn't known I had. The trees stood silent, watching, and I hauled myself up, shaky but steady. "We've got work," I said, low, turning to Doña Rita. She nodded, fierce, and I knew this was just the start. A crack in Chiloé's dark heart, and I was all in. The fog was thin now, the whispers quiet, but I felt it. The forest still, alive, still waiting. I'd faced my past, broken its hold, but something bigger loomed, and with Doña Rita beside me, I'd chase it down, whatever it took. The clearing glowed soft in the aftermath, dawn creeping through the trees, and I stood there chest heaving, the fog a faint haze now, the whispers a murmur on the wind. My lantern lay dark against the altar, its fight gone, and Mateo's last words, "Don't run," echoed in my head, a quiet fire keeping me upright. Doña Rita watched me, her wild hair still, her eyes deep and steady. "You all right?" she asked, her voice low, rough from the night. I nodded slow, my throat tight. Yeah, empty, but all right. The ache was there, raw and real, but lighter, like I'd shed a skin I didn't know I'd worn. The girl's smile lingered in my mind, faint and real, her thank you, a balm on the scars Mateo's death had carved. "They're gone," I said, low, glancing at the spot where they'd faded. "Really gone?" My voice shook, half hope, half doubt, needing it to be true. "For now," Doña Rita said, stepping closer, her hand brushing the altar's mossy edge. "You broke their chains, yours too, but Chiloé's deep, Olavo, holds more than you know." Her words sank in, heavy, a warning wrapped in truth, and I felt it. The forest wasn't done. I grabbed the lantern, cold and useless now, and shoved it in my pack, hands still trembling from the fight. "What's left out there?" I asked, rough, my eyes scanning the trees, their shadows, long and quiet but alive, watching me back. "Others," she said, grim, her gaze flicking to the woods. "Lost ones, seas dead, forests ghosts, all tied up in this place. You've opened a door. Darkness'll push back." Her voice was steady, but I saw the weight in her. Years of facing this alone. The guardian was gone, its growl a memory, but I felt its heat still, a shadow lurking just out of sight. "I didn't ask for this," I muttered, bitter, kicking at the dirt. "Thought I was here to fix things, protect this place." My chest tightened, guilt flickering back. "You are," she said, sharp, cutting through my haze. "But protecting means fighting, means facing what you've done, what others have lost. You're part of this now." Her eyes burned into mine, fierce, and I nodded, slow, feeling that spark catch. The forest stretched out, endless and dark, its hum faint but there, a pulse I couldn't ignore. "We've got to find them," I said, low, resolve kicking in hard. "The others, whoever's trapped." My voice steadied, a promise to myself, to Mateo, to her. Doña Rita's lips twitched, a faint smile, tired but real. "We will together. But it's a fight, Olavo, bigger than tonight." She grabbed a stick, sketching lines in the dirt, paths, plans, and I saw it, a map to the dark we'd chased down. The trees swayed, slow and steady, their branches whispering soft, a taunt, a dare. "Next time we're ready," I said, rough, hauling my pack over my shoulder, the weight grounding me. "No running, not from this." She nodded, fierce, slinging her own bag up. "No running, dig deep, find what's buried, it's not taking us." Her voice was steel, and I felt it lock in. A shared fight, a shared past driving us, a bond forged in this cursed night. Chiloé hummed, alive and restless, and I knew it was waiting, watching, plotting, its shadows biting their time. We'd cracked it open, pushed back, but it wasn't down, not yet, and I felt the pull, the forest calling me back. I stepped toward the trail, Doña Rita beside me, and the dawn lit the way, soft but cold. "We're in this," I said, low, firm, and she met my eyes, nodding. If you like this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more creepy tales. Tell me in the comments what you think happens next, or if you've faced a shadow you couldn't shake. Share it with your friends. Let's see if they dare step into Chiloé with us. I was creeping along the thin, winding trail that sliced through the wild heart of Jamangsim National Forest when it hit me, a prickling, unshakable feeling that something was watching me. The question gnawed at my gut. What if this forest wasn't just trees and dirt, but alive, pulsing with secrets too dark to dig up? The midday sun fought its way through the thick canopy overhead, throwing jagged shadows across the ground, but it wasn't the light that got me, it was the branches. They creaked, slow and deliberate, like old bones groaning, rustling in a way that felt alive, whispering words I couldn't quite catch. I stopped cold, my breath snagging in my throat, and looked down. Fresh tracks cut into the soil, human-shaped, sure, but way too deep, sunk like they'd been stamped by something heavier than any person I'd ever seen. I'm Tadu, 35, a forest ranger born and bred in the raw, untamed sprawl of the Amazon. This place, this endless stretch of green chaos, has been my whole world, my refuge when life got messy, my toughest fight when it turned mean. I've spent years wandering these trails, learning its sounds, its silences, the way the wind hums through the leaves like a song I've memorized. But today, something was off, way off. The air clung to me, thick and heavy, buzzing with a presence I couldn't pin down. Those whispers in the branches grew sharp, urgent, like the forest was yelling at me to get out, but my legs wouldn't move. I was stuck, caught by a dread I couldn't name. Every step deeper made it worse, that feeling sinking into my bones like damp rot. I tried brushing it off. Maybe my head was spinning tales, cooked up from too many late nights and not enough sleep. My grandma's stories flickered in my mind, old yarns she'd spin by the fire about ancient things roaming these woods, guardians gone sour after centuries of being ignored or wronged. I'd always laughed them off. Kid stuff, spooky bedtime, nonsense. But now, standing here, they didn't feel so funny. The deeper I went, the more the forest pushed back, like it was alive and didn't want me poking around. I dropped to one knee, fingers brushing those weird tracks, heartbeat kicking up a notch. They weren't normal, not even close. Too deep, too wide, pressed into the dirt like something massive had walked right through. My stomach twisted, a cold shiver snaking down my back. I glanced up, half expecting some hulking shadow to loom out of the trees, but there was nothing, just the endless green, staring back, alive and quiet. The forest felt like it was holding its breath, every leaf, every vine, buzzing with something, an energy telling me to run, screaming I didn't belong. My dad popped into my head, his face, his voice, all those years ago. He was a ranger too, tough as the roots underfoot, until he vanished on a patrol right here in Yamangsim. No body, no gear, just gone, like the forest chewed him up and swallowed him down. That loss stuck with me, a heavy ache I carried everywhere, and now it was, mixing with this mess, making my chest tight. Had it taken him like it was eyeing me now? Was I next on its list? The sun started dipping, shadows stretching long and thin across the ground, like bony fingers reaching out. The air shifted, got colder, and those whispers turned loud, wrapping me up tight. I could hear them now, warnings, threats, hissing through the leaves like a language I should have known but didn't. It clicked then, I wasn't alone. Something old, something pissed off, was out there hunting me. Night was coming fast, and when it hit, this forest was going to show its real face. The light faded quick, and the woods changed, shifted into something darker, meaner. Birds quit chirping, leaves stopped rustling, and all I got was this dead quiet broken by far-off snaps in the brush. My gut screamed to turn tail, get back to my shack in Port Douglas, but my feet stayed glued, curiosity and fear locking me in place, a messed-up tug-of-war I couldn't win. Then, crack, a twig snapped loud behind me. I spun, heart slamming so hard it hurt. Anna stumbled out of the thicket, my best friend and fellow ranger, her face white as a ghost, eyes big with panic. "Tadu! Thought I'd lost you," she gasped, breath puffing out in the cooling air like little clouds. "Anna! What are you doing here?" I asked, relief flooding me even as my nerves stayed wired. Seeing her was a lifeline, but that unease clung tight, clawing at my insides. I caught wind of weird stuff. People going missing around here, she said, eyes darting over her shoulder like something might jump out any second. Came to, "Warn you! Didn't think you'd go this deep alone!" Her voice shook, and that wasn't like her. She was tough, steady, the one who kept me grounded. I shook my head, trying to shove the shadows out of my brain. I'm okay, just tracking. Some prints. I pointed at the tracks, those deep, freaky marks that didn't make sense. Anna crouched beside them, her frown digging deeper as she ran a finger along the edge. "These aren't right to do," she said, voice low, tense, way too heavy for a person. She looked up, and I saw it. Fear, real fear, flickering in her eyes, matching the knot twisting in my gut. "Yeah," I murmured, barely audible. "Feels like something's out here, something not normal." The words slipped. Out, heavy, and saying them made it real, too real. Anna stood grabbing my arm. "We should go. I don't like this anymore." Her voice cracked, and I felt that old bond between us, years of facing this forest side by side, tugging hard. But I couldn't move. "My dad went missing here," I said, quiet. "I've got to know what happened." That low rumble rolled through again, shaking the ground, growling like the forest itself was mad we'd stuck around. Anna's grip tightened. "Tadu, let's move, now!" She snapped, urgent, pulling me back toward the trail we'd come from. But then, movement, fast and shadowy, flickered between the trees. "You see that?" I hissed, pointing into the gloom. Anna nodded, breath hitching. "We're not alone," she whispered, and the air got thick, pressing down like a weight. Those whispers kicked up, wrapping us tight, hissing warnings I could almost understand. "I can't just leave," I said, voice firm despite the shake in my hands. "Dad's out here somewhere, I feel it." Anna's eyes softened, but fear still burned in them. "Tado, this isn't about him anymore," she shot back, voice breaking. "Whatever's here, it's dangerous. It'll take you too." Her words hit hard, digging into that old wound, but I couldn't shake this pull. The forest wanted me to stay, to dig deeper. A growl cut through, low and close, freezing us both. Anna's face went pale, eyes wide. "What the hell was that?" I rasped, scanning the dark, pulse racing. Whatever it wasn't playing games. It was real, and it was pissed. That growl echoed again, loud, rattling my chest like a drum. My heart hammered, a wild beat matching the noises creeping closer. Snaps, rustles, like voices lost in the wind. My head spun with flashes of Dad, his last patrol, his grin fading into worry, chasing something he never came back from. Was it random, or had he found this thing, and paid for it? "Tadu, move!" Anna's shout snapped me out of it, sharp and scared. She was right there, tugging my arm, her eyes darting to shadows that seemed too alive, too close. That pull I'd felt? It wasn't just curiosity, it was recognition. Like the forest knew me, knew my blood. "Ever think this place is more than trees?" I asked, voice shaky, spilling thoughts I couldn't hold back. "Like it's alive, remembers us?" Anna's frown deepened, her grip tightening as she searched my face, picking up on the dread I couldn't hide. "What are you getting at?" she said, voice low, eyes flicking to the dark beyond us. I swallowed hard, the words tumbling out, raw. What if Dad wasn't lost? What if he found something and it kept him? What if I'm supposed to be here? "Tadu, don't," she started, but the growl roared again, cutting her off, shaking the ground hard. A shape darted right, big, dark, slinking through the brush. "There!" I gasped, pointing, but it was gone, swallowed by the gloom. Before Anna could turn, her breath hitched, fear cracking her calm. "Tadu!" she whispered, trailing off as the quiet stretched, heavy and wrong. My brain raced. Disappearances, Dad, those tracks, nothing random about it. "It's not. Just hunting," I said, half to myself. "It's tied to us, to me." Anna grabbed me tighter, voice shaking. "You're not losing it, but we can't stay. It'll take you." Her panic lit me up, fear and fight mixing hot in my chest. Those stories Dad told, guardians, spirits, weren't just tales. They were warnings I'd ignored too long. That shape flashed again, closer, clearer. A figure, tall and lean, eyes glinting like broken glass. "Anna!" I yelled, shoving her back as it stepped out, not human, not animal, just wrong, a piece of the forest's anger made real. "Run!" I barked, adrenaline surging. We bolted, branches clawing at us, the growl chasing hard. My ankle burned, but I pushed through. Couldn't stop, wouldn't. Anna raced beside me, breath ragged. And I knew this wasn't just escape. We were running straight into whatever Dad had found, the truth I couldn't dodge. The forest screamed. Around us, wind, leaves that growl, closing in tight. "What is it?" Anna panted, voice high, scared. I didn't have answers, just a gut punch. This wasn't random. It was personal, tied to my blood, my past, pulling me deeper. A root snagged my boot, and I hit the dirt hard, pain spiking up my leg. "Tadu!" Anna yelled, skidding to a stop, yanking me up. That figure loomed closer, slow now, like it knew we couldn't outrun it forever. Its eyes locked on me, knowing, hungry, and my chest went cold. "Keep going," I rasped, shoving her forward. But my head spun. Dad's face, his last words about the woods, hiding something big, blurring with this thing staring me down. Was this what got him? Was I next, or worse, meant for it? The growl roared again, deafening, and the forest shook, trees bending, shadows surging. Anna pulled me hard and we ran, but I felt it, that pull, stronger now, not letting go. We weren't just prey, we were part of this, and the truth was coming, whether I wanted it or not. That roar shook the air, rattling my ribs as we stumbled. Through the dark. My ankles screamed with every step, but I gritted my teeth, pushing past the pain. Anna's grip on my arm was iron, dragging me along. The forest was alive, a wild, angry thing, branches snapping like they wanted to grab us, hold us back for whatever was coming. "Tadu, what's chasing us?" Anna gasped, voice cracking as she dodged a low limb, her breath puffed out in frantic bursts, white in the cooling air. I couldn't answer, just shook my head, mind spinning too fast to catch a clear thought. That figure, tall, wiry, eyes, like shards, kept pace, a shadow weaving through the trees, never quite showing itself full on. Then, snap, a shape stepped out, right in our path, cutting us off. I skidded, nearly crashing into Anna, heart slamming so hard I thought it had bust out. It was a woman, or something like one, pale and ghostly, hair a tangled mess of vines and leaves, eyes burning with a light that wasn't right. "Leave!" she screeched, voice sharp and wild, slicing through the growl still rumbling around us. I froze, breath stuck, a weird jolt hitting me, like I knew her deep down where memories don't reach. "You're..." I started, but she cut me off, fast. "Quiet!" she snapped, and the air buzzed, heavy with power. Anna flinched beside me, eyes wide, caught between terror and confusion. "You want answers?" the wraith hissed, gliding closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that crawled under my skin. "But truth weighs heavy. Your father chased it too and paid." Her words slammed into me. Dad, out here, digging up something he shouldn't have, something that took him. The growl surged, loud and mean, backing her up, shaking the dirt under my boots. "What did he find?" I yelled, voice raw, desperation spilling out. Her eyes locked on mine and I saw it. A flash, quick and brutal, Dad standing right here, hands shaking as he traced carvings on a tree, fear twisting his face. He broke. "The balance," she said, soft now, almost sad. "You choose, follow him or walk away." Anna yanked my arm hard. "Tadu, we can't stay." Her voice shook, fear bleeding through, but I was stuck, rooted by that pull, that need to know. "Wait," I shouted, leaning toward the wraith, chest tight. "I've got to understand." She drifted closer, overwhelming, her presence thick like smoke. "Choose then, but you won't slip free of what's inside." The growl roared, deafening, and the ground bucked, trees swaying wild, shadows lunging. "Tadu, please!" Anna begged, pulling harder, but I shook my head. I couldn't run, not yet. This was about Dad, about me, about whatever this forest had buried. I want the truth. I yelled, voice cracking, staring her down. She reached out, cold fingers brushing my forehead, and bam! Visions hit hard. Dad's fear, his hands on those carvings, symbols glowing faint, a power he couldn't hold. Me as a kid, shadows whispering. My name? Mom's scared eyes at the window. It all crashed in, breaking everything I thought I knew. No! I staggered back, gasping. This isn't what he wanted. The wraith's gaze softened, just a flicker. He sought wisdom. Wisdom. Cost. Choose smart, Tadu. The forest doesn't forget. That roar blasted again, shaking everything, and I felt it. A jolt, tying me to this place, alive in my blood. Anna, together. We face it, I said, turning to her, her face pale with shock. The wraith faded, leaving her echo. Face it. You will! And the forest screamed, branches cracking, shadows swirling. I grabbed Anna's hand, tight, and we stood fast, light and dark, clashing around us. A storm I poured my soul into, trying to fix what Dad broke. The growl softened, shadows pulling back, trees calming, but it left me wrecked, ankle throbbing, chest heavy with scars that wouldn't fade. We'd held it off, but as we caught our breath, a glow caught my eye, a symbol, faint on a tree, pulsing like a heartbeat. Anna, there, I rasped, pointing, and she gasped, stepping closer. What's it mean? She whispered. More to come, I said, dread sinking deep. This wasn't over, just the start. That symbol burned into my head, glowing like a warning. I couldn't dodge. Anna's hand stayed in mine, steady, but my chest was tight. Those visions, Dad's fear, my own past crashing in. What if this isn't a gift? I whispered, voice shaking. What if it's a curse? Anna turned, eyes big, scared. What are you saying? I swallowed, the truth clawing out. What if this power, this tide of the forest, can't be tamed? What if it eats us alive? My dad's face flashed, again chasing answers till they swallowed him, leaving me to pick up the pieces. A sting hit my chest, sharp, hot, spreading fast. I grabbed at it, breath hitching, a dark pulse I'd ignored too long. It's not just the forest remembering, I said, voice breaking, tears burning. It's me. I'm changing, Anna. It's in me. Her face went white, fear cutting deep, and I knew. She saw it too, the truth as bad as anything out there. My blood carried this, Dad's legacy. A curse I couldn't shake, sinking roots into me I couldn't pull out. The growl rumbled again, low, far off. A promise it wasn't done. Shadows crept in slow, and I felt it, final, heavy, locking me in. There's no cure, I said, flat, the weight hitting hard. Anna's grip tightened, her eyes wet but fierce. We were in this, cursed or not. Hey, if you like this creepy ride, smash that like button and subscribe for more. Share it with your buddies. Let them get spooked too. Drop a comment. Favorite scare? Want more forest horrors? Tell me. I've got shadows to spare. On a moonless night, I stood frozen, my eyes locked on the sky as the stars winked out one by one, like flickering candles snuffed by an unseen hand. I'm Tane, a 37-year-old ranger at Tongariro National Park in New Zealand, and this is my tale, Scary Horror Stories, Park Ranger Edition. The air was still, heavy with an unnatural quiet that pressed against my ears, amplifying the thud of my own heartbeat. I shifted my weight, boots crunching softly against the underbrush as I descended a familiar slope, the rugged terrain of Tongariro, sprawling beneath me. This place had always been my refuge, its volcanic peaks piercing the heavens, its emerald forests whispering life. But tonight, it felt like a stranger, a looming shadow swallowing the vibrancy I'd once known, my breath. Caught as I traced the last fading star, its light swallowed by a void that seemed to stretch beyond the sky itself. A chill slithered up my spine, sharp and insistent, as if the universe was unraveling before me, piece by fragile piece. I'd been drawn here years ago, leaving behind a geologist's life for the call of these wild lands. The Tongariro Massif, with its ancient craters and jagged ridges, stirred something primal in me, a connection to the earth's deep rhythms I couldn't ignore. But lately, those rhythms had faltered. The skies darkened unnaturally, and a creeping dread seeped into every corner of the park. I'd noticed it first in the trees, stalwart guardians of this place, now weeping a thick black liquid that oozed from their bark like tears of tar. Reached out, brushing my fingers against a nearby trunk, the rough texture familiar, yet alien under my touch. The liquid was hot, stinging my skin as it smeared across my fingertips, and beneath it, I heard a faint thumping, a steady pulse, like the heartbeat of something alive within the wood. Each day, I'd tried to gather samples of this strange sap, bottling it up in glass vials I kept in my pack. I'd hoped science could crack its secrets, give me answers to quiet the growing unease in my chest. But every test came back inconclusive, and the dread only deepened. The forest was shifting, warping into something unrecognizable, a twisting, grotesque parody of the sanctuary I'd sworn to protect. Branches curled inward like clawed hands, leaves drooped with an oily sheen, and the air thickened, heavy with a tension I couldn't name. I'd always believed in nature's balance, the delicate dance of ecosystems I'd studied as a geologist. But now, that faith trembled. The locals in Tarangi whispered about a shadow in the trees, a curse for those who strayed too far into the woods. I'd dismissed their tales as superstition, the kind of stories spun over campfires to spook kids. Yet, as I watched the sky empty out, a gnawing doubt took root. Maybe they weren't just tales after all. Deeper in, I stumbled into a clearing ringed with bizarre formations, blackened wood twisted into shapes that defied reason, like sculptures carved by a mad artist. The trees here bled more of that dark liquid, pooling in inky puddles around their gnarled roots. My gut screamed to turn back, but something pulled me closer, an urge I couldn't shake, as primal as the forest itself. I knelt, peering at the ground where the liquid shimmered, and felt eyes on me, a presence lurking just beyond my sight. Memories of my father flooded in. He'd brought me to these peaks as a kid, his voice steady as he taught me the earth's pulse, its stories written in stone and sky. He'd warned me of nature's wrath, but also its mysteries, tales of stars guiding us through the dark. Now, with those stars gone, I felt a hollow ache. What if the land I loved was turning on me? The liquid bubbled as I lingered, reacting to me. And I knew this wasn't just nature gone wild. It was something darker, a silent invasion threatening everything I held dear. Night deepened around me, and the forest transformed, sinking into a silence so thick it felt like a weight on my chest. The last star vanished, leaving a void that mirrored the dread in my gut. My shaky breath fogged in the cold as I brushed the pulsing liquid again. It recoiled, alive, and I jerked back, stunned. Footsteps crunched behind me, snapping me out of my haze. A figure stepped from the shadows. Mara, a fellow ranger, hurry, familiar outline a flicker of comfort in the dark. Her usually bright spirit was dulled, brown eyes wide with fear, her dark hair tangled from the wind. "Tane," she called, her voice quivering like a taut wire. "What are you doing out here?" "Alone? Not at night, not with this." She gestured at the trees, their blackened forms looming like specters against the faint twilight. "I had to see it," I said, trying to keep my tone steady, though it wobbled under the strain. "The trees, this liquid. Something's wrong, Mara. We've got to figure it out." My words felt thin, dwarfed by the enormity of what I'd stumbled into. She shook her head, breath puffing out in quick, nervous bursts. "It's not just the trees. The locals in Tarangi, they're scared stiff. They say the forest is hungry, that it'll swallow us if we don't get out." Her gaze darted around, as if the shadows might lunge at us. I wavered, torn between digging for truth and bolting for safety. What if we're the only ones who can stop it? We can't just abandon this place. It's hurting. My voice cracked, fear seeping through the cracks I'd tried to patch. The ground rumbled beneath us before she could answer. a low growl echoing through the clearing. The liquid's heat spiked, searing my knees where it pooled. I flinched as it seemed to pulse faster, like it knew we were there. Mara stepped back, her face draining of color. "Tane, we need to go. This isn't natural. It's something else entirely." Her words trembled, mirroring the quake underfoot, urging flight over fight. Then another figure emerged. A man, wild-haired and clad in a ragged jacket, his face carved with worry lines. Kieran, a local wanderer with a deep tie to these woods, both revered and feared by folks in town. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, voice rough as gravel. "What do you know?" I demanded, curiosity shoving caution aside. I'd seen him before, drifting through the park like a ghost, but tonight his eyes burned with something fierce. He edged closer, his stare intense, almost fevered. "The forest is changing. Angry. Been that way for years. The balance is shot." He pointed at the trees, grim. "That liquid? It's the forest blood, drained dry, crying for help against what we've done to it." Mara's eyes widened, fear sharpening her voice. "How do we stop it? It can't keep taking." Kieran cut her off, urgency rising. "The stars aren't just fading, they're food. The forest's eating their light. We've got to act, fast, or we're all trapped in the void." Despair crashed over me, heavy as the dark around us. My father's lessons, my love for this land, they slammed into the reality of what we faced. "What do we do?" I whispered, voice barely holding. "Together. Find the source," Kieran insisted, fierce. "The forest has a heart, its core. Reach it, and we might fix this. But hurry, or the dark takes us all." Mara's uncertainty met my resolve. We had to choose, dive in or run. I knew retreat wasn't an option anymore. The frigid wind tore through the clearing as Kieran's words sank in, swirling leaves in, a chaotic dance around us. It felt alive, like the forest was exhaling, aware of every move we made. My heart pounded, Kieran's warning looping in my head, the darkness swelling, pressing closer. Mara gasped, snapping my focus. "Look! Over! There!" She pointed, and I followed her gaze to a flicker of light weaving through the trees, a rhythmic pulse, faint but insistent, like a heartbeat calling out from the shadows. "What is it?" I whispered, my voice swallowed by the rustling woods. Instinct screamed run, but my feet stayed rooted, curiosity chaining me to the spot. The light danced, hypnotic, pulling me in despite the dread clawing my gut. Kieran's face twisted, horror etching deeper lines. "It's the beacon, the forest's essence begging for help, but it's a trap too. We've got to be careful." His voice trembled, betraying the calm he tried to hold on to. I remembered my father's stories about the forest's heart, a sacred wellspring of life he'd shown me as a kid, his hands tracing volcanic rock as he spoke. He'd warned of its power, how it could turn if the balance broke. Those tales felt alive now, warnings carved into my bones. "Do you hear that?" Mara's voice shook, cutting through my thoughts. I tilted my head. The whispers started soft, then swelled, weaving through the leaves in a tongue I couldn't catch. Anguish and desperation dripped from every sound, wrapping me tight. "I can't stand it." I burst out, hands gripping my skull as memories surged. My father's voice barking lessons, his laugh warm as we stargazed. "The forest is alive, Tane," he'd said. "Respect it, or face its wrath." Those words burned now, sharp and accusing. My breath hitched, chest tight with the past. I'd lost him years ago, wandered these woods after chasing peace, only to find shadows of my guilt. Had I tipped this balance somehow, ignored his warnings too long? "Tane, you okay?" Mara's concern broke through, her eyes searching mine. "No," I shouted, voice splintering. "What if it's my fault? What if it's mad? Because I didn't listen." The weight of it crushed me, guilt spilling out, raw. Kieran stepped in, his gaze piercing. "It's not just you. The forest feels everyone's wrongs, but there's more here. This darkness isn't just reaction, it's manipulation. Something's eating our fears." His words landed hard, shifting my dread. The whispers weren't just cries, they were alarms. And I got it then. If the forest was a victim to We weren't alone in this fight. Mara, Kieran, I said, resolve hardening. We find that heart, not just to heal it, but to face whatever's behind this. The light pulsed again, urging us on, and I felt its pull tighten, a thread tying me to the unknown. A roar shattered the air, the ground quaking as shadows twisted. Alive and furious, I froze, caught between instinct and will. Run! Kieran yelled, but I dug in. Not yet, I snapped, breaking Mara's grip as she tugged me back. We can't let fear win. I'm done running. Anger flared, fueled by years of dodging my past. I plunged toward the light, boots pounding, earth ready to meet whatever waited in the forest's depths. My heritage, my fight, my truth unfolding in the dark. Shadows pulsed as I dove in, the forest humming with restless power, every root and branch alive, bristling with intent. My heart slammed, fear mixing with a fierce need to take back what I'd lost, to face this head on. The light ahead flared, casting jagged silhouettes, twisted branches clawing at the sky. Whispers roared, a storm of voices drowning my thoughts. In despair, but I pushed through, Mara and Kieran's steps echoing behind me. Stay close, I shouted, voice bouncing off ancient trunks. Their worry weighed on me, but I couldn't stop. This was bigger than us, a fight for the forest itself, and I was its voice now. A shape loomed from the dark, shifting, smoky, cloaked in shadow. I stopped, breath catching. Who are you? I demanded, steady despite the fear twisting my insides, my fists clenched tight. It paused, and I glimpsed silver hair, a face I'd buried in memory. Tane, it whispered, my father's voice warped with sorrow. You've come to free us, haven't you? The words hit like a punch, hope flickering alive. Free us, I echoed, confusion tangling with longing. Not just the forest, he said, a haunting tune in his tone. The darkness feeds on this place's pain, twisting the lost into despair. Face it, or it takes all. Tane, wait, Kieran broke through, sharp. That's not him, it's a trick. Mara nodded, frantic, but I felt my father's warmth, his love wrapping me like it used to, real solid. No, it's him, I argued, heart aching. He's helping us. Kieran grabbed my arm. It's feeding on your memories, don't fall for it. His words cut, but the pull was stronger, tugging me toward the figure. No, I shouted, fists tight. I won't let it control me. The figure sneered, warping into a mask of malice, eyes burning with hate. You think you can resist? You're part of this Tane. Join it. Pain and anger coiled around me, my past a snake squeezing tight. But a spark flared, defiance, raw and mine. I wasn't just the forest's kid. I was its shield, its fight. Enough, I roared, power surging from deep inside, rooted in the earth I'd sworn to guard. I thrust my hands out, calling the forest's life, its pulse, into me a flood, against the dark. The ground shook, light bursting from me, slamming into the shadows like a tidal wave. The thing shrieked, rage cracking the air, as my will clashed with its hunger. Now, Tane, Kieran yelled, urgent, finish it. I let go, fear, guilt, all of it, turning pain into strength. I release you, I bellowed, light swallowing. Me whole, pure and blinding, the dark recoiled, howling as the forest's heart thudded alive again, but I felt it still, a thread of malice holding on, the real fight, just kicking off. Light flared, a rush of power igniting every nerve, banishing shadows that had clung to me forever. I sank to my knees, gasping, the forest reborn around me. Trees straight, leaves gleaming, but a heavy ache lingered in my chest. Kieran rushed over, worry creasing his face. Tane, you okay? Relief softened his eyes, but I felt the strain. Bones aching, heart scarred. Mara knelt, awe and fear mixing. Your father, not really him, right? I shook my head, his voice still ringing, fake but cutting deep. No, a trick. Felt so real, though. My words shook, the emotional toll spilling out, raw and unfiltered. It's alive again, Kieran said, hand on my shoulder. You did it. The trees stood proud, whispering life, but a chill hit me, their rustle hiding secrets I couldn't catch. A shadow darted at the clearing's edge, quick, dark, alive. "There's more out there," I gasped, instincts flaring, dread spiking anew. Mara's eyes widened, fear mirroring mine. What if it's waiting? I stood, resolve pushing through exhaustion. "We can't stop. It'll come back stronger if we do." The pendant at my feet pulsed, vine-wrapped. A key, maybe, to something bigger. "We're a team," Kieran said, firm. "Whatever's next, we face it together." I nodded, heavy with memory but lifted by their strength, the bond we'd forged in this fight. Laughter, low, chilling, rolled through the trees, the ground trembling soft. The dark wasn't gone, just lurking, biding time for its next move, stronger than before. "Did you think I'd leave?" it hissed, a voice slithering from the void, smoky, eyes blazing hate. "Your light feeds me now." My stomach dropped, defiance hardening against despair. "We won't let you win," I shouted, voice raw but steady, Mara and Kieran's hands gripping mine. It laughed, thunderous, shadows swallowing the glow, gloom choking us tight. The forest shuddered, a living thing reborn into something worse, a cycle of dark I'd sparked awake. "You've already lost," it sneered, gesturing to the rippling. Ground energy twisting wild, despair pressed down, but I stood firm. We weren't done. Not yet. The pendant glowed, a flicker of hope in my fist, whispering of fight still to come. It surged, a roar splitting the air. I braced, knowing this wasn't just an enemy, but a nightmare reborn, testing everything we were. Together, we faced it. Hearts pounding, the forest's pulse a drumbeat of mystery and dread, echoing into the dark unknown ahead. If you like this tale, hit like and subscribe for more. Share with friends, pull them into Tongariro's shadows. Comment your favorite bit or what ending you'd want next. I'm ready to dive deeper with you.